Nadia had her back against the wall. My hand was beside her head. She was looking up at me with those hazel eyes. And for the first time in 4 years, there was nothing standing between us. No ring, no loyalty, no reason to stop. She whispered, "Daniel, you sure about this?" I didn't answer with words. I kissed her slow, deep, the kind of kiss that had been building for 4 years and had nowhere left to hide. Her hand came up and grabbed the front of my white shirt. She pulled me closer instead of pushing me away, and I felt every wall I had ever built just fall straight to the ground. That night changed everything. But to understand why that moment meant what it meant, you need to know the whole story. Because this didn't start at that wall. It started the day my brother brought her home and introduced her as his girlfriend. Somewhere deep inside you, there's a version of love you've been waiting to feel again. Maybe it was a touch, a look across a room, a moment you never forgot, or a heart that never fully healed. Hold on to that feeling, because this story was made for exactly that place inside you. Welcome home to Destiny Love Stories. If you're returning, thank you. If you're new, you were meant to find us. Subscribe. Don't skip. Don't rush. The magic is waiting for you. Now, let's begin. I was in the garage when they pulled up. It was a Saturday afternoon in Charlotte, North Carolina. Late September. The kind of day where the air still carries a little summer, but you can feel fall creeping in at the edges. I had the hood of my truck up, hands covered in grease, old R&B playing from the Bluetooth speaker on the workbench. I wasn't expecting anyone. Marcus hadn't said anything about bringing somebody over. I heard his car first. That loud exhaust he never bothered to fix. Then voices, his laugh, and then another voice, softer, lighter, that I didn't recognize. I wiped my hands on the rag hanging from my back pocket and walked to the garage door. Marcus came around the side of the house first. He was grinning the way he always grinned when he wanted you to be impressed by something. Big smile, chest out, like he was about to show you something he won. And then she came around the corner behind him. I don't know how to explain what happened in that first second without sounding crazy. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was actually the quietest thing I had ever felt in my life. Like everything just went still for half a second. The music, the air, my own thoughts. She was wearing a simple yellow sundress. Natural hair pulled back loosely with a few curls falling around her face. Hazel eyes that caught the afternoon light in a way that didn't seem fair. She was laughing at something Marcus had just said, a real laugh, not a polite one. And she had one hand raised to push a curl away from her face. She was the most naturally beautiful woman I had ever seen in my life. And she was walking next to my brother. I felt it for exactly 1 second. Then I killed it, buried it so fast and so deep, I almost convinced myself it was never there. D, Marcus called out, using the nickname he had called me since we were kids. Come meet somebody. I walked over. Slow, casual, everything normal on the outside. This is Nadia, Marcus said, putting his hand on the small of her back. Nadia, this is my brother Daniel. She turned those hazel eyes on me and smiled. A real smile, warm and unguarded. Hi, Daniel, she said, extending her hand. Marcus talks about you a lot. I shook her hand. Firm, quick, professional, almost. Good things, I hope, I said. She laughed softly. Mostly. Marcus threw his arm around her shoulder and pulled her toward the house. Come on, I'll give you the tour. Don't mind the mess. Daniel lives like a college student. I own this house, I said flatly. Marcus laughed. Nadia glanced back at me over her shoulder with this small, amused smile, like she found the exchange between us funny, and then they disappeared inside. I stood there for a second. Then I went back to my truck, put my hands back under the hood, stared at the engine. She's his girl, I told myself. That's it. That's the whole conversation. And I meant it. The thing about Marcus and me is that we were never the same kind of man. We grew up in the same house, same parents, same Charlotte neighborhood, but we came out completely different. I was the quiet one, the one who took his time, the one who thought before he spoke and meant everything he said. Marcus was the opposite, loud, charming, magnetic, the kind of man who could walk into any room and own it in 30 seconds. People loved him immediately, women especially. Our mother used to say Marcus got the spark, and I got the substance. She meant it as a compliment to both of us. But growing up, I won't lie, the spark gets more attention than the substance. Always has. I was 32 at the time. I ran a contracting business I had built from nothing over 8 years. Small but solid, good reputation. I owned my house, paid my bills, minded my business. I didn't have a lot of drama in my life because I didn't invite it. Marcus was 30 at the time. He worked in sales, made good money, and spent it just as fast. He was between apartments and had been staying in my spare room for 3 months, which was supposed to be 6 weeks, but had stretched in the way things with Marcus always stretched. I didn't mind. He was my brother. That's what you do. But Nadia changed the atmosphere of everything the moment she entered it. She started coming around regularly after that first Saturday. Marcus would bring her over for dinner. They would sit on my couch watching movies. She would come with him to family gatherings at our mother's house on Sunday afternoons. She fit into everything effortlessly. Warm with my mother, easy with my cousins, never pretentious, never difficult. My mother loved her within the first 2 weeks. Called her that sweet girl every time her name came up. My aunt said she had good energy. My cousin Trina pulled me aside at one Sunday dinner and whispered, "Your brother better not mess that up." I remember nodding and saying nothing, because I was watching too. Not the way I wanted to watch. I kept that door bolted shut, but I couldn't help noticing things. Small things. The way Nadia listened when someone was talking, fully, completely, like what you were saying actually mattered. The way she helped my mother clear the table, without being asked. The way she threw her head back when something genuinely made her laugh. The way she looked at people directly when she spoke to them. Those hazel eyes steady and honest. She was the kind of woman who made everything feel a little more real just by being in the room. And every time I felt that, I reminded myself of the only thing that mattered. She is Marcus's girlfriend. Full stop. End of thought. I kept my distance without making it obvious. When she was in a room I was in, I was friendly but not warm. Polite but not close. I never sought her out. Never lingered in conversations with her. If Marcus left the room, I found a reason to leave too. It was the only way I knew how to handle it. What I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't find out until much later, was that Nadia noticed. She noticed everything. The first time she and I were ever alone together was about 6 weeks after that first Saturday. Marcus had run out to grab food. He said he'd be back in 20 minutes. Nadia was sitting at my kitchen counter scrolling through her phone. I was washing dishes at the sink with my back to her. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything. Then she said, completely out of nowhere, "You built this house?" I looked over my shoulder, renovated it, bought it as a shell, and rebuilt most of it myself. She looked around slowly, taking it in. "You did a really good job. It feels like a home." I didn't know why that hit me the way it did. It was a simple sentence. But something about the way she said it. It feels like a home. Like she understood the difference between a house and a home and recognized which one this was. "Thank you," I said. She nodded, went back to her phone. I went back to my dishes. 20 seconds passed. "Daniel." "Yeah." "Why don't you like me?" I stopped, set the dish down slowly, turned around. She was looking at me directly, not accusatory, not upset, just honest. Those hazel eyes steady and calm, genuinely curious. "I like you fine," I said. "You're always leaving the room when I come in," she said simply. "I just want to know if I did something." I looked at her for a moment. This woman sitting in my kitchen asking me a straight question and deserving a straight answer. "You didn't do anything," I said. And that was the complete truth. She studied me for a second. Then she nodded slowly like she was filing my answer away somewhere. Okay, she said quietly. Marcus came back for minutes later with food and noise and his usual energy, and the moment dissolved like it had never happened. But it had happened, and somewhere in the back of my mind, behind every wall I had built, I felt something shift, just slightly, just enough, and I didn't like it one bit. The months passed the way months do when you are trying not to feel something. Slowly, heavily, one day at a time. Marcus and Nadia became more serious as the weeks turned into months. She was around more. Her jacket started appearing on my coat rack. Her voice became a regular sound in my house. Her laugh, that real unguarded laugh, became something I heard so often I started recognizing it before I even registered it consciously. And I kept doing what I had been doing since that first Saturday in the driveway. I kept my wall up. I kept my distance. I kept my mouth shut. But the wall was getting harder to maintain. Not because I was weak, but because Nadia was, without even trying, the kind of person who made walls feel unnecessary. She wasn't aggressive about it. She wasn't flirtatious. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just herself. Fully, quietly, consistently herself. And that was the problem. It was around month for that I started noticing things I couldn't unnotice. Not about Nadia. About Marcus. The first thing I noticed was the way he spoke to her when he thought nobody was paying attention. Not loud, not violent, just dismissive, like what she said didn't quite deserve his full attention. She would finish a sentence and he would already be looking at his phone. She would share something that happened in her day and he would give her a one-word response and change the subject to himself. Small things. The kind of things that are easy to explain away individually. But they added up. I noticed the second thing at my mother's house on a Sunday in January. Nadia had spent the better part of an hour helping my mother in the kitchen. She cooked. She cleaned. She sat with my mother and listened to her talk about her garden and her church friends with genuine patience and warmth. When they finally came out of the kitchen together, my mother was glowing. Marcus looked up from the football game, glanced at Nadia, and said, "What took you so long?" Not thank you. Not come sit with me. Just, what took you so long? Nadia's smile didn't disappear, but something behind her eyes did, just for a second, so fast that if you weren't paying attention, you would have missed it completely. I was paying attention. My mother caught it too. She gave Marcus a look that he completely missed because he had already turned back to the game. I sat there holding my glass of water and said absolutely nothing. Because what was I supposed to say? He was my brother. She was his girlfriend. This was not my business. This was not my place. I had no right to feel the anger that was sitting quietly in my chest like a stone. But I felt it anyway. The third thing I noticed was the worst one. It was a Friday night in February. Marcus had gone out with some friends. Nadia was supposed to go with him, but she had mentioned earlier that week she wasn't feeling well. I was home alone working on some contractor bids at my kitchen table when I heard a knock at the front door. I opened it and she was standing there, not crying. Nadia was not the kind of woman who cried easily. I had already learned that about her. But her eyes were red around the edges, and she had that look that people get when they've been holding something together by sheer force of will for too long. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I didn't want to bother my friends with it. I can leave." "Come in," I said. She sat on my couch. I went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of water and sat in the chair across from her. Not next to her, across from her, and waited. For a while she just sat there, hands wrapped around the glass, eyes somewhere on the middle distance. Then she said, "Do you ever feel invisible to someone who is supposed to see you?" I didn't answer right away. I just let the question sit in the room where it deserved to sit. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think most people have felt that at some point." She nodded slowly. "I keep telling myself it's just his personality, that he's not doing it on purpose, that I'm being too sensitive." "Are you being too sensitive?" I asked. She looked at me, those hazel eyes direct and honest the way they always were. "No," she said quietly. "I don't think I am." I held her gaze for a moment. Then I looked away, because I couldn't hold it and stay on the right side of that line at the same time. Have you talked to him about it? I asked. I've tried, she said. He says I'm overreacting. Then he's sweet for a few days, and I think maybe I was wrong. Then it goes back to the same thing. I knew that cycle. I had watched it from the outside for months. The dismissiveness, the brief warmth, the return to dismissiveness. It was a pattern, and patterns don't break themselves. But I didn't say any of that, because saying it would have meant stepping into a place I had no business stepping into. I think, I said carefully, that you deserve someone who sees you, all the time, not just when it's convenient. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Thank you for saying that." We sat there for another hour, talking about small things, easy things, her job as a pediatric nurse at Novin Health, my contracting business, a book she had been reading, a neighborhood in Charlotte we had both grown up near without ever crossing paths. The conversation was easy in a way that felt almost unfair, like it came too naturally, flowed too smoothly, felt too right. When she finally stood up to leave, she paused at the door. "Daniel," she said. "Yeah, you're a good man." She said it simply. No drama, no agenda, just the truth as she saw it. And then she was gone. I closed the door and stood there in my hallway for a long moment. Then I went back to my kitchen table and stared at my contractor bids without reading a single word on them for 20 minutes. Because something had shifted again that night. Something bigger than the last time. And no matter how hard I tried, I could not shift it back. Spring came, then summer. Marcus and Nadia hit a rough patch in April that lasted about 3 weeks. They barely spoke. She stopped coming around. My mother called me asking if I knew what was going on, and I told her honestly that I didn't. Then they made up, and everything went back to normal, or what looked like normal from the outside. I watched Nadia move through that reconciliation with a kind of quiet grace that broke something in me a little. She didn't make a big production of forgiving him. She just absorbed it and kept going, kept showing up, kept being warm and present and real with everyone around her, including me, while Marcus continued being exactly who Marcus had always been. I started going to gym at 6 in the morning just to have somewhere to put the energy. I took on more contracting jobs, longer hours, more projects. I told myself it was good for the business, and it was, but it was also good for keeping my mind occupied with things that had nothing to do with a woman in a yellow sundress with hazel eyes and a laugh that I could pick out of any room. My cousin Trina called me one evening in July. "You good?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "You just seem like you're carrying something," she said. "You've seemed like that for a while." "I'm fine, Trina," I said, just busy with work. She was quiet for a second. Then, "It's her, isn't it?" Not a question. I didn't answer. "Daniel, she's Marcus's girl." I said, "Flat, final." "I know," Trina said quietly. "I'm just saying I see it, and I think she sees it too." "Good night, Trina," I said. I hung up. I sat in my truck in my own driveway for 10 minutes before I went inside. Trina was too perceptive for her own good, always had been, but hearing it said out loud, even just those few words, made it real in a way that my own internal silence had been protecting me from. She sees it too. I told myself Trina was wrong, reading too much into nothing, seeing what wasn't there. But deep down, in the place where I kept everything I refused to say out loud, I knew she wasn't. The last Sunday dinner before everything changed was in late September. 2 years, almost the day since that first Saturday, in the driveway. Nadia sat across the table from me at my mother's house. She was wearing a burgundy blouse, and her hair was down, loose curls around her shoulders. She was talking to my mother about one of her young patients, a 7-year-old boy who had given her a hand-drawn card on his last visit. Her whole face was alive when she talked about it, lit up from the inside. Marcus was on his phone. My mother was watching Nadia with pure love in her eyes. I was watching the table. Under the table, My hand was a fist on my knee. 2 years. 2 years of watching this woman be quietly, consistently overlooked by the one person who was supposed to see her. 2 years of building walls and maintaining distance, and talking myself down from every single feeling that tried to surface. I was tired, not of Nadia, never of Nadia, tired of the silence, tired of the distance, tired of pretending I didn't feel what I felt every single time she walked into a room. But she was still his girlfriend. So I kept my fist on my knee, kept my eyes on the table, kept my mouth shut for a little while longer, just a little while longer. I found out Nadia left Marcus on a Wednesday, not from Marcus, not from Nadia, from my mother. She called me at 7 in the morning while I was still in bed. I could tell from her voice before she even finished her first sentence that something had happened. Nadia left your brother, she said. I sat up slowly. When? Last night, apparently. She packed a bag and left. Marcus called me this morning. He sounds bad. I sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, eyes on the floor. Did he say why? I asked, even though I already knew why. I had been watching why for 2 years. She said she was unhappy. My mother said that she had been unhappy for a long time. I nodded to myself slowly. You okay? My mother asked. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. I'll call Marcus later. I hung up and sat there for a long moment. Then I got up, went to the bathroom, turned the shower on cold, and stood under it until my head was clear. She left. She was gone. And I felt two things at the exact same time. Relief that she was out of something that had been slowly diminishing her, and a guilt so heavy it sat on my chest like a brick, because underneath the relief was something else. Something I had no business feeling on the day my brother's relationship ended. I felt hope, and I hated myself for it. I called Marcus that afternoon. He was a mess, not the kind of mess that comes from deep love being lost, though I don't think Marcus would have recognized that distinction. It was the kind of mess that comes from a man who didn't value something until the moment it was gone. Pride wounded, ego bruised, the shock of a woman he had taken for granted actually having the strength to walk away. He talked for 40 minutes. I listened. I didn't say I saw this coming. I didn't say you should have treated her better. I didn't say any of the things that were lined up behind my teeth. I just listened because he was my brother, and that was what brothers did. When he finally wound down, he said, I'm going to get her back, Dee. She just needs some space. She'll come back. I said nothing. You think she'll come back? He asked. I think, I said carefully, that you should give her whatever space she needs. He took that as agreement. It wasn't. We hung up, and I went back to work. I gave it 3 weeks. 3 weeks of absolute silence. No contact with Nadia. No asking about her through mutual connections. No driving past the apartment complex on the east side of Charlotte, where I had heard through my mother that she was staying with a friend temporarily. 3 weeks of work in gym and contractor bids and cold showers, and telling myself to be patient, to be decent, to not be the kind of man who moves on his brother's ex the moment she walks out the door. But 3 weeks turned into 4, and 4 turned into 6. And 6 weeks after Nadia left Marcus, I was sitting in my truck outside a hardware store on a Tuesday evening, and my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized it immediately. She had called my phone once about 8 months earlier when Marcus had left his wallet at my house and wasn't picking up. The message said, Hey, it's Nadia. I hope this isn't weird. I just wanted to say thank you for always being kind to me. I'm doing okay. Take care of yourself. I sat there and read it 3 times. Then I typed back, I'm glad you're okay. You deserve to be okay. She replied with a single small emoji, a white heart. I put my phone in my cup holder and drove home. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and had an honest conversation with myself. The kind you can only have in the dark when there is nobody around to perform for. She was no longer with Marcus. She had been gone 6 weeks. She had reached out, And I had been carrying something for 2 years that wasn't going away on its own. I had waited. I had been respectful. I had kept every boundary that needed to be kept. I had never once said a word out of turn or acted out of line, but she was no longer with Marcus, and I was done pretending I felt nothing. I didn't do anything rash. I didn't call her that night. I didn't show up at her door. I gave it 3 more weeks. 9 weeks total from the day she left. Long enough to be decent. Long enough to be sure. And then on a Friday night in November, I put on a clean white shirt, got in my truck, and drove across Charlotte to her apartment. I sat outside her building for 11 minutes. Not because I was scared exactly, but because I understood the weight of what I was about to do. I was about to walk up to my brother's ex-girlfriend and tell her the truth. The whole truth. 2 years worth of it. And once I said it, I couldn't unsay it. There was no coming back from that conversation. Marcus would find out eventually. My family would have feelings about it. There would be noise and opinions and people taking sides. I sat with all of that for 11 minutes. Then I thought about that Sunday dinner. Nadia's face lit up talking about her patient. Marcus on his phone. Her laugh. Her hazel eyes. 2 years of watching her be unseen by the one person who was supposed to see her. I thought about her standing at my door that February night. Do you ever feel invisible to someone who is supposed to see you? I thought about Trina's voice on the phone. I think she sees it too. I got out of the truck. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor. I took the stairs, walked down the hallway, stopped at apartment 214. I knocked twice. Silence for a moment. Then footsteps. Then the door opened. She was wearing a loose cream-colored sweater and gray sweatpants. Hair down, natural curls loose around her face. No makeup. Completely undone in the way people only are when they're alone in their own space and not expecting anyone. She was breathtaking. Her hazel eyes went wide for just a second when she saw me. Then something in them settled, like she wasn't entirely surprised. Like some part of her had been waiting for this knock without knowing she was waiting for it. Daniel, she said. Hey, I said. A beat of silence. Do you want to come in? She asked. Actually, I said, can you come out here for a second? I need to say something, and I need to say it standing up. She studied me for a moment. Then she stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door almost closed behind her. She crossed her arms loosely, not defensively, just the way people do when a hallway is cool. And she looked at me, waiting, patient, those hazel eyes steady and open. I took one breath, and then I just said it. I've been carrying something for 2 years, I said, and I kept it to myself because it wasn't my place to say anything, and I believe in doing the right thing even when it costs you. But you're not with Marcus anymore. And I've waited as long as I know how to wait. So I'm just going to say it straight. She didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. The day Marcus brought you home, I said, and you came around that corner, I felt something right away. And I shut it down right away because you were his and that was the only thing that mattered. But it never went away, Nadia. Not in 2 years. Not once. I watched you show up for this family with everything you had. I watched you be warm and real and patient and extraordinary. And I watched you be invisible to someone who should have been paying attention every single day. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed none of this. It was just coming out the way truth comes out when you have held it long enough. I'm not here to talk about Marcus, I said. I'm here to tell you how I feel. Because you deserve to have someone look you in the eyes and tell you the truth. And the truth is, I think you are the most remarkable woman I have ever been around. And I have thought that since the first day I saw you. And I'm done holding that in. The hallway was completely quiet. Nadia was looking at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Something soft and something overwhelmed all mixed together. Her arms had uncrossed at some point while I was talking. Her hands were at her sides now. Then she took one step toward me, and another until she was close. Close enough that I could see every detail of those hazel eyes. Close enough to see her chest rising and falling a little faster than before. Daniel, she said softly. How long have you actually been feeling this? Since the day I shook your hand in my driveway, I said. Something broke open in her expression. Not sadness. Something more like relief. Like a door she had kept closed for a very long time had just swung open. I noticed you, she whispered. From the beginning I noticed you. The way you were always decent. Always steady. The way you looked at me like I was actually there. She paused. I told myself I was imagining it. You weren't, I said. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then her back found the wall behind her, naturally, softly, and I was close and my hand went up beside her head against the wall, and we were right there, right in that place, her hazel eyes looking up at me. For years of everything sitting right there between us with nowhere left to hide, she whispered, Daniel, you sure about this? And I kissed her, slow, deep, the kind of kiss that had been building for 4 years and finally had nowhere left to hide. I felt her hand come up and grab the front of my white shirt. She pulled me closer instead of pushing me away, and I felt every wall I had ever built just fall straight to the ground. She kissed me back with everything. Not desperate, not rushed, but full, complete, like she had been holding this back just as long as I had, and was finally allowed to put it down. My hand moved from the wall to her face, cupping her jaw gently, tilting her head slightly. She made the softest sound against my lips, and her other hand came up to my chest, and I felt her fingers curl into the fabric of my shirt like she was grounding herself. We stayed there for a long time, the hallway quiet around us, the world outside completely irrelevant. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing differently. Her forehead came to rest against mine. Eyes closed, her hand still holding my shirt. I noticed you too, she whispered again, like she needed me to know it one more time. I know, I said softly. She pulled back just enough to look at me, those hazel eyes warm and bright and completely unguarded. And then she smiled, not the polite smile, not the social smile, the real one. The one that started slow and took over her whole face and made everything around her feel lighter. I had been waiting 2 years to be on the receiving end of that smile directed at me without having to look away. I didn't look away. You want to come inside? She said softly. I just made tea. Yeah, I said. I want to come inside. She took my hand, laced her fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. Pushed the door open, and pulled me in. We sat on her couch until 2 a.m, talking, really talking. The kind of conversation that only happens when two people finally stop performing and just exist with each other honestly. She told me things she had never said out loud before, about how lonely the last year with Marcus had felt, about how she had started shrinking herself to take up less space, about how she had almost convinced herself that was just what love felt like after beginning wore off. I told her things too, about the gym at 6 a.m, about the contractor bids I stared at without reading, about every Sunday dinner where I kept my eyes on the table because looking at her for too long felt dangerous. She laughed when I told her about the cold showers. Cold showers, she said, eyes wide. Multiple, I said. She covered her mouth with her hand and laughed so hard her eyes watered. That real laugh. The one I had been hearing for 2 years from across every room. This time I was a reason for it. When she finally walked me to the door at 2:15 a.m, she leaned against the doorframe and looked at me with those hazel eyes soft and certain. Daniel, she said. Yeah, don't disappear on me. I looked at her for a moment. This woman who had been worth every single day of silence and distance and restraint. I'm not going anywhere, I said, and I meant every word. We didn't put a label on it right away. That first night, sitting on her couch until 2 a.m, her hand finding mine somewhere between the second cup of tea and the third honest conversation, felt complete on its own, like it didn't need a title yet, like it just needed to breathe. I drove home that Friday night, with all 4 windows down despite the November cold. Charlotte moving past me in the dark. The city quiet and steady the way it gets after midnight. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Light. Not happy exactly. Not yet, because I was fully aware of the complicated thing we were standing at the edge of. But light, like something heavy had been set down after being carried too long. She texted me Saturday morning. Just 2 words, good morning. I smiled at my phone like a teenager, set it face down on my kitchen counter, picked it back up 30 seconds later. Good morning, I typed back. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in months. She replied. You? Same. A pause. Then, I keep thinking about last night. I leaned against my kitchen counter and looked at that message for a moment. Me too, I typed. All of it. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Daniel, what we doing? I thought about that for a moment. The honest answer. The real one. I typed, we are finally doing what we should have been doing a long time ago. But we're going to take it slow. And we're going to be careful. Because you matter too much to rush. The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, okay, slow. Careful. I can do that. Then, but last night was real. Last night was the realest thing I felt in years. I replied. She sent back a single emoji. That white heart again. I put my phone in my pocket and went to make breakfast. And for the first time in 2 years, I was genuinely hungry in the morning. We kept it completely between us. Not because we were ashamed, but because we both understood that what we were building needed time to become solid before it was exposed to the weight of other people's opinions. Marcus was still raw. The family was still adjusting to the breakup. The timing was too fresh and too complicated for outside noise. So we kept it quiet. Just us. And there was something unexpectedly beautiful about that. We talked every day. Long phone calls late at night after I finished work. Her voice in my ear while I sat on my back porch in the dark. Easy, warm, unhurried. She told me about her patients. I told her about my job sites. We talked about our childhoods, our parents, our separate journeys through Charlotte that had somehow never crossed until Marcus put us in the same room. I learned things about her in those weeks that I had spent 2 years only being able to observe from a distance. I learned that she was the eldest of 3 sisters and had been the responsible one her entire life. The one who held things together, kept the peace, absorbed the weight so everyone else didn't have to. I learned that she had wanted to be a pediatric nurse since she was 9 years old when a kind nurse at a hospital had held her hand during a scary procedure and made her feel completely safe. I learned that she stress cooked when something was bothering her, that her kitchen became a full production when her mind was heavy. I learned that she cried at commercials but never at movies. I learned that she had a playlist she only listened to when she was driving alone that was completely different from the music she played around other people. I learned that she was even more extraordinary up close than she had been from across every room I had been watching her from for 2 years. And she learned things about me, too. She learned that I was the kind of man who showed love through action rather than words, that I fixed things, built things, showed up quietly, and did what needed doing without announcement. She learned that I had been engaged once, briefly, at 28, a woman named Cassandra who wanted a version of me I couldn't be, and that it had ended without drama, but left me careful about who I let close. She learned that I was close to my mother in a way that wasn't performative, that I called her every Sunday not out of obligation, but because I genuinely wanted to. She learned that I was a man who meant what he said, and said what he meant, and did not know how to be any other way. That's rare. Nadia said one night on the phone, "What is?" I asked. "A man who just means what he says." She said quietly, "You don't realize how rare it is until you've spent time with someone who doesn't." I didn't respond to that directly, but I heard everything she wasn't saying, and I held it carefully the way you hold something that has been through damage and deserves gentleness. The first time I saw her after that Friday night was 10 days later. She came to my house on a Sunday afternoon. Not a family dinner. Just her. Just us. She brought food she had cooked the night before. Jollof rice and fried plantains, and a chicken stew that made my entire kitchen smell like warmth. She moved around my kitchen like she belonged there, reheating things, finding containers, setting 2 plates on my kitchen counter the way she had done 100 times before, except this time Marcus wasn't in the next room. This time there was no line to stay behind. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched her. She looked up and caught me looking. "What?" she said, smiling. "Nothing," I said, "just looking." She shook her head with a small laugh and went back to the stove, but she was smiling to herself. I could see it from across the kitchen. We ate at my kitchen counter, side by side, shoulders occasionally touching. Easy conversation, moving between bites of food. Outside my kitchen window, the November afternoon was gray and cold and completely irrelevant. After we ate, she stayed. We moved to the couch. She tucked her feet underneath her and turned toward me with her back against the armrest. I sat with my arm along the back of the couch, not around her yet, just near her. The television was on, but neither of us was watching it. She was telling me about a little girl at work. 4 years old, fearless, had been coming in for weekly check-ins and had decided Nadia was her best friend and greeted her every visit with a full running hug. "She just sprints," Nadia said, laughing. "Full speed. Every time. Like I might disappear if she doesn't get there fast enough." I was watching her face while she talked. The way it moved. The way her hands came up when she was describing something. The way her eyes got bright when she talked about something she loved. She caught me watching again. This time she didn't say what. She just looked back at me. Held it. Those hazel eyes soft in the gray afternoon light, coming through my window. The space between us on the couch had somehow gotten smaller, without either of us making a deliberate move. She reached out and straightened the collar of my shirt. A small, quiet gesture. Her fingers brushing my neck for just a second, then her hand stayed, resting against my chest. She looked up at me, and she kissed me. Not the way the first kiss had been. That one had been built from 4 years of restraint, finally releasing all at once. This one was different. This one was slow and intentional and completely her choice. Her hand pressed flat against my chest, her lips warm and certain. She kissed me like she had decided something, like she was planting a flag in the ground and saying, This is where I am. This is what I want." I kissed her back just as slowly, my hand coming up to her face, my thumb tracing her cheekbone gently. I felt her exhale against my lips, a soft, releasing breath, like the last of something tense finally leaving her body. When she pulled back, her forehead came to my shoulder, her hand still on my chest. I pressed my lips to the top of her head and held them there. We stayed like that for a long time, the television murmuring in the background, the gray afternoon outside, my house quiet around us. "Daniel," she said softly into my shoulder. "Yeah, I'm really glad you knocked on my door." I pressed my lips to her hair again. "I'm really glad you opened it," I said. The weeks that followed were the best weeks of my adult life. I am not exaggerating when I say that. I had built a good life, a solid life, business, house, family, respect. But there had always been something underneath it all that was quietly missing, a particular kind of warmth, a specific kind of being known. Nadia gave me that. She showed up to my job site one Wednesday with lunch and sat in my truck with me for 45 minutes between my cruise shifts, just because she was passing nearby and thought of me. She left a book on my front porch one morning with a sticky note that said, "This reminded me of something you said. Let me know what you think." She called me on her drive home from night shifts just to hear my voice before she went to sleep. Small things, consistent things. The kind of love that doesn't perform for an audience. The kind that just quietly shows up. And I did the same for her. I fixed the leaking faucet in her apartment that her landlord had been ignoring for months. I learned that she loved a specific candle scent, warm vanilla and sandalwood, and kept one on my kitchen counter. So the house smelled like something she liked when she came over. I remembered everything she told me and asked about it later. The little girl at work, her sister's job interview, The difficult family she had mentioned worrying about. She noticed all of it. I could see it in the way she looked at me, like she was still adjusting to being seen. We were careful in public. No shared posts. No mentions. No appearances together at places where family or mutual connections might be. Marcus was still hurting. Still calling me occasionally. Less now than the beginning, but still. He had stopped saying he was going to get her back. But I could hear in his voice that he hadn't fully let go either. Every time he called, I felt the weight of what I was keeping from him. I didn't feel guilty about loving Nadia. I couldn't. What I felt for her was too honest and too real to call guilt, but I felt the complexity of it fully. Marcus was my brother. We had grown up in the same house. He had trusted me. We have to tell him eventually, I said to Nadia one night. We were lying on my couch, her back against my chest, my arm around her, the room dark except for the television. She was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. The longer we wait, the worse it gets, I said. I know that too, she said. She turned slightly to look up at me. I just want a little more time, before it gets complicated, before the noise starts. I understood that. I felt it too. This thing between us was clean and quiet and completely ours right now. The moment it went outside these walls, it would become a conversation, a debate, a problem for other people to have opinions about. A little more time, I said, but not forever. Not forever, she agreed. She settled back against my chest. My arm tightened around her slightly. Outside my window, Charlotte moved through its night, quiet and steady, completely unaware of the two of us on this couch, of these weeks, of this thing we had built in the small, careful space between what used to be and what was coming next. I pressed my lips to her temple. She laced her fingers through mine. And for that night, just that night, the world outside could wait. It found us anyway, the way things always do when you're not ready. On a Thursday evening in late January, I got a call from my cousin Trina. Her voice was different immediately. Tight, careful. Daniel, she said, Marcus knows. I sat up slowly from where I had been lying on my bed. What did he hear? I asked. Everything, she said. Someone saw you two together last weekend at the restaurant on Central Avenue. They told him today. I closed my eyes for 1 second. How bad is he? I asked. Trina paused. Daniel, she said quietly. He's on his way to your house right now. I was already standing. I heard his car before I saw it. That loud exhaust he never fixed. The same one I had heard pull up in my driveway 2 years ago on that first Saturday, the day everything started. Now it was screaming down my street at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, and I already knew what was coming before his headlights swung into my driveway. I was standing in my living room when he hit the front door. Not knocked. Hit. Daniel. I opened it before he could do it again. Marcus was standing on my porch breathing hard. Not from running. From something else. That particular kind of breathing that comes from a man who has been sitting with something explosive in his chest for too long and has finally stopped trying to contain it. He looked at me for 1 second. Then he walked straight past me into my house. I closed the door quietly behind him. He was pacing, short, tight circles in the middle of my living room, his jaw set, his hands moving, opening and closing at his sides the way they did when he was trying to hold himself together and not quite managing it. I stood near the door and waited. Tell me it's not true, he said, his voice low, control but barely. I didn't say anything. He stopped pacing and looked at me. Tell me it's not true, D. Marcus, tell me my brother did not go behind my back with my girl. She's not your girl anymore, I said, quietly, carefully, but clearly. Something shifted in his face. She was my girl for 3 years, he said. 3 years. And you were in my house. You were at every dinner. You shook her hand and smiled at her, and the whole time I kept my mouth shut. I said, the whole time I kept my distance. The whole time she was with you, I never said a word, and I never crossed a line. Not once. But you felt it, he said. The words came out almost like an accusation of something deeper than action. You felt it and you never told me. What was I supposed to say, Marcus? I said, "Hey, brother, I have feelings for your girlfriend." What does that conversation look like? What does that accomplish? It accomplishes not making me look like a fool. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Not from weakness, from pain. And I heard it. Underneath all the anger, I heard the actual wound. Not just pride, not just ego. Something more complicated and more human than that. I exhaled slowly. I never tried to make you look like anything, I said. And I never went behind your back while she was with you. What happened between Nadia and me started after she left. Weeks after. Weeks, he repeated. The word came out like something bitter. Weeks. My relationship ends, and weeks later my brother is... Marcus, how long has it been going on? A few months. He laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind that comes out when something is too painful for a straight reaction. A few months, he said. So, while I was calling you, while I was talking to you about her, while I was telling you I was going to get her back. I know, I said. You knew and you said nothing. I know. That's not being good brother D. His voice dropped on that sentence. Quieter, more direct, and that one landed differently than the shouting. That's not what brothers do. I stood with that for a moment, because he wasn't entirely wrong. Not about that specific part. I had known, and I had said nothing. I had listened to him talk about winning her back, while already knowing that what was between Nadia and me was real and growing. That was the part one couldn't fully defend. Not cleanly. You're right, I said. I should have told you. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right time, and there was never a right time. That part, I own that. I should have told you. He looked at me. Something in his expression shifted slightly at the admission, like he hadn't expected it. But Marcus, I continued, I need you to hear me. I did not plan this. I did not go looking for this. And I am not going to apologize for what I feel for her, because it is real, and it has been real for longer than I want to admit. What I will apologize for is not being straight with you sooner. That's the part that was wrong, and I own it. The room was quiet for a long moment. Marcus was standing in the middle of my living room. This man I had grown up with, fought with, protected, loved my entire life, and he looked smaller than I had ever seen him look. Not physically. Something else. Something inside. Did you ever think about me? He asked quietly. Even once. Did you think about what this would do to me? Every single day, I said. It's why I stayed away for 2 years. It's why I gave it weeks after she left. It's why I lost sleep over it. Yes, Marcus. I thought about you. I always thought about you. But I also couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel what I felt forever. He looked at me for a long time. Then he shook his head slowly. I trusted you, he said, more than anybody. He walked past me to the front door, opened it, stopped with his hand on the frame, and his back to me. Don't call me, he said quietly. Not right now. And then he was gone. The loud exhaust disappeared down my street, and I stood alone in my living room in the quiet he left behind. The family fracture happened fast. By Friday morning, my mother had heard. By Friday afternoon, my aunt had called twice. By Saturday, my cousin Jerome, Marcus's closest friend in the family, had sent me a message that was 3 lines long and none of them friendly. My mother called me Saturday morning, her voice careful and measured the way it got when she was feeling something big and choosing her words precisely. I need you to come see me, she said. I drove to her house in Noda that afternoon. She had tea made when I got there, which meant she'd been thinking about this conversation and wanted it to happen at her kitchen table the way all serious conversations in our family happened. I sat down. She sat across from me. She looked at me for a moment before she said anything. Tell me everything, she said. The truth. All of it. So I did. I told her about the first day, the driveway, the feeling I buried immediately, the 2 years of distance and silence, the things I watched Marcus do and not do, Nadia at my door that February night, the 9 weeks I gave it after she left, the Friday I drove across Charlotte and knocked on her door. My mother listened to all of it without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her mug, her eyes on me steady and unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You kept that inside for 2 years?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. She exhaled slowly. "That must have been heavy." "It was," I said. Another pause. "Do you love her?" my mother asked. The question sat in the kitchen between us, simple and enormous at the same time. I thought about Nadia's hand finding mine on the couch, her voice on late-night phone calls, the way she looked at me like I was actually there, the little girl at work who ran to her full speed, the sticky note on the book on my porch, her forehead on my shoulder, her lips on mine in the gray afternoon light. "Yeah," I said, "I think I do." My mother nodded slowly, not approving exactly, not disapproving, processing. "Marcus is hurt," she said. "I know. He's going to be hurt for a while. I know that too. And this family is going to have opinions," she said. "Loud ones. You know how we are." "Yes, ma'am." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "I raised you to be honest, and I raised you to be decent," she said. "And from what you're telling me, you were both of those things even when it cost you. So I'm not going to tell you that what you feel is wrong." She paused. "But you need to fix things with your brother. That relationship cannot stay broken. You hear me?" "I hear you," I said. She squeezed my hand once and let go. "Bring her to see me," she said quietly. "When the time is right, bring her." The noise lasted for weeks. Jerome stopped speaking to me entirely. 2 cousins took Marcus's side loudly and publicly. The family group chat became a place I stopped opening. There were conversations happening about me that I wasn't in, opinions being formed and shared and hardened. I let it happen. I didn't defend myself in the group chat, didn't argue with Jerome, didn't call family members to lobby for my side of the story. I had said what I needed to say to Marcus directly, and I had nothing performed for anyone else. Nadia took it harder than I did. She felt responsible. I could hear it in her voice when we talked. She had been the one in the relationship. She had been the one who left. And now she was the reason 2 brothers weren't speaking and the family was divided, and she carried that weight the way she carried everything. Quietly and completely. "This is my fault," she said one night. "No," I said immediately. "Daniel." "Nadia, you leaving a relationship that was making you invisible is not your fault. You choosing to let someone love you properly is not your fault. None of this is your fault." She was quiet. "I just hate that it's costing you your brother," she said softly. "Marcus and I will find our way back." I said, "We always do. We've been brothers our whole lives. This is not the end of that." "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "Because I know him," I said. "Underneath all the anger right now, I know my brother, and when the noise settles and the pride cools down, he's going to have to look at himself honestly. And Marcus has never been able to avoid that forever." She didn't respond right away. "Then you still love him, even now." "He's my brother," I said simply. "That doesn't have an off switch." Another silence. "Daniel," she said softly. "Yeah, I don't deserve you." "Stop that," I said. "I mean it." "So do I said. "Stop it. You deserve every good thing. All of it." She went quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, softer. "Okay," she said finally, small and genuine. "Okay," I said back. It was 6 weeks into the noise when Marcus did something I didn't expect. He showed up at Nadia's apartment. She called me 20 minutes after he left, her voice steady but shaken underneath. "He came here," she said. I gripped my phone. Are you okay? I asked immediately. I'm fine, she said. He wasn't aggressive. He was different. He brought flowers. He was calm. He said he was sorry. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking, and he realized what he lost, and he wanted to try again. The kitchen went very quiet around me. What did you say? I asked. I told him I needed time to think, she said. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Okay, I said. Daniel. Nadia. I mean it. Take the time you need. I don't want to hurt you, she said, her voice tight now. You're not hurting me by being honest, I said. And I would rather you take the time to be completely sure than rush a decision and carry doubt. I'm not going anywhere, but I need you to choose freely. Not because of what we have, not because of guilt about Marcus. Freely. She was crying now. Quietly. I could hear it. Why are you so good? She whispered. I just love you right, I said simply. The words came out before I had fully decided to say them. But they were true, and I didn't take them back. The line was very quiet. Daniel, she said softly. Take your time, I said. I'll be here. I hung up, and then I sat at my kitchen table in the silence of my house, and I waited. The next few days were the longest of my life. Not because Nadia went cold on me. She didn't. She still texted in the mornings, still called some evenings. But there was something underneath our conversations now, a careful quality, a slight distance, that hadn't been there before Marcus showed up at her door with flowers and an apology. I didn't push. I had meant what I said. She needed to choose freely, without pressure from either side. And if I started calling more or showing up unannounced or asking where her head was every 5 minutes, then I was doing the same thing I had always respected her too much to do, taking away her space to think clearly. So I gave her the space, and I stayed busy enough not to lose my mind in it. Marcus didn't stop at one visit. That was the part one hadn't anticipated. The Marcus I knew, the one who moved fast and lost interest faster, had never been the type to fight for something after it was gone. He had always been better at acquiring than maintaining. So when Nadia told me about the second visit, I was genuinely surprised. It was 4 days after the first one. He came back without flowers this time, just himself. He asked if he could take her to dinner. She said she wasn't ready for that. He asked if he could just sit and talk. She let him in. She told me about it the next morning. He was different, she said, her voice careful, like she was trying to describe something accurately without overstating it. He actually listened. He asked questions. He let me talk without interrupting. He acknowledged specific things I had said to him before that he always brushed off. He remembered them. I sat with that. What did you feel? I asked. A pause. Confused, she said honestly. Because part of me wanted to feel nothing, and I didn't feel nothing. But Daniel, what I felt wasn't what I used to feel either. It was something smaller, something more like sadness maybe, for what it could have been if he had been that version of himself all along. That's an important distinction, I said quietly. I know, she said. I know it is. The third visit happened on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus took her to Freedom Park. They walked, talked for 2 hours. He bought her coffee from the cart near the pond the way he used to do when they first started dating 3 years ago. He told her things he had never said while they were together, that he had been selfish, that he had taken her for granted, that losing her had forced him to look at himself in ways he had been avoiding. She told me all of this on Saturday night. I listened to every word. He cried, she said quietly, at the park. When he was talking about how he treated me, he actually cried. I was standing at my kitchen window, looking out at my backyard in the dark, the yard I had built with my own hands, the house I had renovated from nothing. Everything solid and steady around me, while the thing I cared about most was sitting in the balance somewhere across town. Marcus doesn't cry, I said. It wasn't a challenge, just a fact. In 35 years, I had seen my brother cry twice. I know, she said. That's why it got to me. Silence. Nadia, I said. Yeah. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay, she said. Do you still love him? The pause that followed was the longest 5 seconds of my life. I think, she said carefully, that I love who he is trying to become. But I spent 3 years loving who I hoped he would be, and it cost me a lot of myself. And I don't know if what I'm seeing now is real change or just pain talking. That's a fair answer, I said. Daniel. It's a fair answer, I repeated. I mean that. Another silence. What about you? She asked softly. What are you feeling right now? I thought about being honest, about telling her that I was standing in my kitchen at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, holding my phone with my jaw tight and my chest heavy, that I was trying to be the bigger man, while simultaneously being a human being with feelings that didn't care about being noble. I'm okay, I said. Daniel. I'm okay, Nadia. She knew I wasn't entirely, but she let it go. I'll figure this out, she said quietly. I promise. I know you will, I said. We said goodnight. And I stood at my kitchen window for a long time after. Sunday came and went without a word from her. Monday was quiet too. I worked a full day on a renovation project in Plaza Midwood. 12 hours of physical work. Tearing out old drywall, laying new subfloor, measuring and cutting and building. The kind of work that empties your head because your hands are too busy to let your mind wander. It didn't work entirely, but it helped. Tuesday morning, I woke up to a text from Marcus. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, yeah, come by tonight. He showed up at 7. Different from the last time he had been at my house. No explosive entrance. No tight jaw. No pacing. He came in quietly and sat on my couch, and for a moment we just existed in the same room. 2 brothers with something enormous sitting between them. I got 2 beers from the kitchen, set one in front of him, sat in the chair across from him. We were quiet for a moment. Then Marcus said, I owe you an apology. I looked at him. Not for being angry, he said. I stand by that. I had a right to be angry. But I said some things that night that weren't fully fair, and I've been sitting with that. You were hurting, I said. I understood it. Still, he said. He picked up his beer, set it back down. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past weeks. About Nadia, about you, about myself. He paused. And I've had to be honest with myself about some things I'd rather not be honest about. I waited. I didn't treat her right, he said. Flat, direct, the way Marcus only spoke when he was done performing, and just saying the truth. I knew it while it was happening, and I told myself it wasn't that bad, that she was being too sensitive, that she'd get over it. He shook his head slowly. She wasn't being too sensitive. I was being careless. And I was careless with something that didn't deserve to be treated carelessly. The room was quiet. I see her differently now, he continued, now that she's gone. Isn't that something? You don't see what you have until... He stopped, laughed quietly at himself. Every man says that. Every single man says that after. Like we can't learn it any other way. Most of us can't, I said. He looked at me. You did, though. You saw her clearly from the beginning. I didn't respond to that. That's what kills me most, he said quietly. Not even the betrayal part. Just, you saw her. The way I should have been seeing her the whole time. And she felt that. I think she felt that from you before she even admitted it to herself. He picked up his beer, drank, set it down. I'm going to keep trying to get her back, he said. I want you to know that. I'm not giving up. But I also, he stopped, seemed to be working something out. I can't keep being your brother and being at war with you at the same time. It's costing me more than I can afford. Same, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. I'm still angry, he said. I know, I said. But you're still my brother, he said. Always, I said. He nodded slowly, extended his hand across the coffee table. I leaned forward and took it. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But we shook hands and held it for a moment, the way men do when they are acknowledging something that words aren't quite big enough for. It wasn't fixed, but it was a beginning. Wednesday came. Thursday. Friday morning, I was on a job site by 7. By noon, I had gotten 3 texts from my crew about materials and answered all of them. By 2, I had eaten a sandwich in my truck and was back inside pulling wire. At 4:15, my phone buzzed. Nadia, are you home tonight? I looked at the message. I will be by 6. I typed back 3 dots. Then, okay, nothing else. I got home at 5:45, showered, changed into a clean shirt, made no plans beyond that. I didn't know what was coming. I had stopped trying to predict it. At 6:30, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. Nadia was standing on my porch. She was wearing a simple dark green jacket over a white top, hair down, hazel eyes carrying something. Not sadness exactly. Something more like resolution. Like a woman who had made a decision and was standing fully inside it. She looked at me for one moment. Then she stepped forward, put both hands on my face, and kissed me. Not soft, not tentative. Full and certain and completely her. Both hands holding my face like she was making sure I was real. Like she was done with distance and done with wondering and done with anything that wasn't exactly this. I kissed her back immediately, my hands finding her waist and pulling her close. She made a small sound against my lips, relief and certainty, and something that had been held back too long, finally being set free completely. When she finally pulled back, she kept her hands on my face, her forehead against mine, eyes closed, both of us just breathing. "It's you," she whispered. "Daniel, it has always been you. I just needed to be completely sure so I could come here and say it without any doubt left in me. And now," I asked quietly. She opened her eyes, those hazel eyes steady and clear and completely certain. "No doubt," she said. "None." I exhaled slowly, something in my chest releasing, something I had been holding since the day Marcus first showed up at her door with flowers. Finally, fully letting go, I pulled her inside. She came willingly, completely, and the door closed behind her on everything that had been standing between us. She stayed that night, not the way that needs explaining away. Just, she stayed. We sat on my couch for hours, talking, really talking the way we had that very first night at her apartment. Except this time there was no uncertainty underneath it, no careful measuring of words, no part of either of us holding anything back. She told me what she had told Marcus, that she had seen the change in him, that it was real, and she believed it was real. But that real change in someone who hurt you doesn't automatically mean they get to come back into your life. That she had spent 3 years giving Marcus chances, and what she had learned was that she deserved someone who didn't need a loss to treat her well. Someone who saw her value before it was taken away. "I told him," she said quietly, "that I hoped he took everything he learned and gave it to the next woman, completely, without holding back. Because if he does that, if he actually becomes that man consistently, he's going to make someone very happy." That was generous. I said. "It was honest," she said. "I don't hate Marcus. I never hated Marcus. I just couldn't keep being the person who paid for his growth." I nodded slowly. "How did he take it?" I asked. "Hard," she said quietly. But he didn't argue. He just nodded and he left. She paused. "I think somewhere underneath everything he knew, he's known for a while." We sat with that for a moment. Then she turned to look at me, pulled her feet up underneath her on the couch the way she always did. "Daniel," she said. "Yeah. You said something to me on the phone last week." I looked at her. "You said, 'I just love you,' right?" she said softly. "Do you remember that?" "I remember," I said. "Did you mean it?" I held her gaze. "Every word," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, something moving through her expression, something open and unguarded and completely real. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have for longer than I knew what to do with it." I reached over and pulled her close. She came easily, tucking herself against my side, her head on my shoulder, her hand on my chest, right over where my heart was. I pressed my lips to the top of her head and held them there. Outside my window, Charlotte was doing what Charlotte did, moving through its Friday night, loud and alive and completely unaware of the two of us on this couch. Finally, fully, completely on the same side of everything. "No more secrets," she said quietly. "No more secrets." I agreed. "No more distance," she said. "Never again," I said. She exhaled slowly, long and releasing, and then she was quiet, and I held her. And for the first time since that first Saturday in my driveway 2.5 years ago, everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. The call from Marcus came on a Tuesday morning. Nadia told me about it that same evening. She was sitting across from me at my kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of tea, and she walked me through the whole conversation word by word the way she always did when something mattered. Marcus had called to ask for one final conversation. Not at her apartment. Not at a park. He asked her to meet him for coffee at a place they used to go to together in South End, a small corner cafe they had discovered in the first month of dating 3 years ago when everything was still new and light and full of possibility. She had said yes. I didn't ask her not to go. I didn't flinch when she told me. I understood what that meeting was. Not a rekindling, not a door reopening. It was a closing, the kind that needed to happen in person to be real. Some endings require room and two people sitting across from each other, and the truth being said out loud without a phone between them. "Are you okay with it?" she asked me. "Yes," I said, and I meant it completely. She looked at me with those hazel eyes steady and searching, making sure. "Daniel, Nadia, go. Say what needs to be said. Close it properly. You deserve that, and so does he." She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "I'll call you right after," she said. "I'll be here," I said. She met him on a Thursday morning. I went to work. A full day on a kitchen renovation in Dilworth. New cabinets, new countertops. The kind of detailed work that requires your complete attention or you make expensive mistakes. I poured myself into it completely. Measured twice. Cut once. Kept my hands busy and my head focused. By noon, I had not checked my phone once. By 2, I checked it once. Nothing yet. For I was packing up tools when it buzzed. "Just left. Calling you in 10 minutes. I sat in my truck. Engine off. Charlotte afternoon. Moving around me. 10 minutes felt like 40. Then my phone rang. "Hey," she said. Her voice was steady. A little quieter than usual. The particular quiet of someone who has just been through something emotional and is still settling. "Hey," I said. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said. "I'm okay." A pause. "How did it go?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "He was already there when I arrived," she said. "Sitting at the same table we always used to sit at. Coffee already ordered for both of us. He remembered mine exactly." She paused. That almost got me. Not because I want to go back. Just because it reminded me that he does know me. He always knew me. He just didn't always choose to show it. "That's a real thing," I said quietly. "I sat down and we just talked," she continued. "Really talked. No agenda. No negotiating. He told me he had stopped trying to get me back, that he had done a lot of reflecting, and realized that what he was doing was more about his own ego than about genuinely loving me well. He said, and this is the part that surprised me, he said he was glad I left, because leaving took courage, and he had spent 3 years making it hard for me to have that courage. I sat with that for a moment. That was a version of Marcus I didn't see often, the one underneath all the noise and the charm and the performance, the one that appeared rarely and quietly and meant more than the loud version ever could. He said something else, Nadia said, her voice slightly different now. What? I asked. He said, tell Daniel I said he better take care of you, because you deserve to be taken care of. The truck was very quiet. I cleared my throat once. He said that. I asked, word for word, she said softly. I looked out my windshield at the Dilworth Street in front of me. Afternoon light on old trees and brick sidewalks. People moving past with no idea what was happening in this truck. I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't fully realized was still tight. How did you leave it? I asked. We hugged, she said. A real one. Long. The kind where both people are saying something they can't say out loud. And then I walked to my car and he walked to his, and that was it. That was it, I repeated quietly. That was it, she confirmed. A long, comfortable silence sat between us on the phone, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then she said, Daniel. Yeah. Come get me. I'm still in the parking lot on Tremont. I don't really want to drive yet. I'm already moving. I said. I started the truck. She was sitting on the hood of her car when I pulled up, jacket on, hair down, face tipped slightly up toward the afternoon sky the way people do when they need air and space, and a moment of just existing without thinking. I parked, got out, walked over. She looked at me when she heard my footsteps, and she smiled. That real smile, slow and full and taking over everything. I stood in front of her. She was still sitting on the hood, so our eyes were almost level. I put my hands on either side of her on the car. You good? I asked. Better now, she said. She reached up and straightened my collar. That small, quiet gesture she had been doing since that Sunday afternoon on my couch months ago. Her fingers brushing my neck. Her eyes on mine. Thank you, she said softly, for giving me the space to do that properly. You didn't need my permission, I said. I know, she said, but I needed your trust, and you gave it without me asking. I looked at her for a moment. This woman on the hood of her car, in a South End parking lot on a Thursday afternoon. Everything about her familiar and extraordinary at the same time. Let's go home, I said. She slid off the hood and took my hand. Yours or mine? She asked. Mine, I said. I'll cook. She laughed. You cook now. I've always cooked, I said. You just never let me prove it. Then let's go, she said. Prove it. She squeezed my hand, and we walked to my truck together, her shoulder against my arm. The afternoon, light warm on both of us. I cooked that night. Grilled chicken, roasted sweet potatoes, sautéed greens with garlic. Nothing fancy. Just good food made with attention. Nadia sat my kitchen counter on a bar stool and watched me move around my own kitchen and gave a running commentary that made me laugh harder than I had laughed in months. You actually know what you're doing, she said, sounding genuinely surprised. I told you, I said. You did tell me, she admitted. I should have believed you. You should believe me more often, I said. She pointed at me. Don't push it. We ate at the counter side by side, easy and warm. The kind of dinner that feels like something, like a life, like a rhythm, like a thing that would go on indefinitely and you would never get tired of it. After dinner, she washed and I dried. Her idea. She said it was only fair since I cooked. We stood at my kitchen sink shoulder to shoulder, passing dishes back and forth, and she was humming something low under her breath, a song I didn't recognize, but that sounded like it belonged in exactly this moment. I looked at her sideways while I dried a glass. What? She said without looking up. Nothing, I said. You keep looking at me, she said. I spent 2 years not being allowed to look at you, I said. I'm making up for lost time. She looked up at that. Those hazel eyes soft and warm. She put down the dish in her hand, turned toward me fully, put both hands flat on my chest, and looked up at me. Daniel Marcus Webb, she said. Nadia, I said. I love you, she said simply. I just want to keep saying it until it stops feeling new. I set the glass down. put my arms around her, pulled her close. Say it as many times as you want, I said. She pressed her face into my chest, her arms coming around my waist. And we stood in my kitchen like that, the dishes half done, the evening settling around us, her heart against mine. 3 weeks after that Thursday afternoon in the South End parking lot, Marcus called me. Not a long call. Marcus was never one for long calls. "D," he said. "Yeah," I said. "I meant what I told her," he said. "Take care of her." "I will," I said. "I know you will," he said. That's actually the one thing I was never worried about. A beat of silence. "We good?" I asked. A pause. Longer than I wanted, but honest. "We're getting there," he said. "That's enough," I said. "Yeah," he said. "It is." We hung up. I sat in my truck in my driveway and looked at my house. The house I had built with my own hands. The windows lit from inside, where Nadia was on my couch reading the book she had left on my porch months ago, the one with the sticky note, that she had brought back over and never taken home again. I sat there for a moment, just taking it in. Then I got out and went inside. She looked up when I came through the door, book in her lap, feet tucked under her, hair loose around her shoulders. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's good." She smiled, went back to her book. I sat next to her. She leaned into me automatically, like gravity, like something that had always been true, finally being allowed to act freely. I put my arm around her. She turned a page, and outside my window Charlotte moved through its evening, steady and alive, completely unaware that inside this house 2 people had found their way to exactly where they were supposed to be. She said yes on a Sunday morning, not because I had planned it to be a Sunday, not because I had researched the perfect day or consulted a calendar or mapped out the most romantic timing. It happened on a Sunday because that was the morning I woke up next to her and looked at her sleeping face in the early light coming through my bedroom window and knew, with the kind of certainty that doesn't need rehearsing or second-guessing, that I was done waiting for the right moment. I had waited long enough in my life. She was lying on her side facing me, hair loose on the pillow, lips slightly parted, completely at peace in a way that still got me every single time, the way she slept like someone who finally felt safe, like someone who had put down a weight she had been carrying for too long and hadn't picked it back up. I lay there watching her for a few minutes. Then I got up quietly, went to the back of my closet where I had put the small box 3 weeks earlier after finding it at an estate jeweler on Trade Street, a vintage setting, round center stone, simple and elegant and completely her. I had known the moment I saw it, hadn't hesitated for a single second. I came back to the bedroom doorway and leaned against the frame. She was awake now, eyes open, looking at the ceiling with that quiet morning expression she had, the one that meant her mind was just beginning to move and she hadn't decided what to do with the day yet. She turned her head and saw me standing there. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning," I said. She noticed something in my face. Her expression shifted slightly, not alarmed, just attentive, the way Nadia got when she was reading a room. "Daniel," she said slowly, "what are you doing?" I walked to the bed, sat on the edge beside her. She pushed herself up to sitting, back against the headboard, those hazel eyes on me fully now. I held the box in both hands for a moment. Then I looked at her. "I spent 2 years loving you in silence," I said, "and I promised myself that if I ever got the chance to love you out loud, I would never waste a single day of it." I paused. I don't want to waste another day. I opened the box. She looked at the ring, then at me, then back at the ring. Her hand came up slowly to cover her mouth. "Nadia," I said, "you are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known. You are the reason I understand what it means to love someone without condition or performance or holding back. You walked into my life on a Saturday afternoon in September, and nothing has been the same since. And I don't want it to ever be the same again." Her eyes were full, Not spilling yet. Just full. Will you marry me? I said. She looked at me for a long moment, those hazel eyes moving over my face the way they did when she was taking something incompletely, filing away in that place. She kept the things that mattered most. Then she reached out and took my face in both hands. And she said, "Yes, Daniel, yes." I put the ring on her finger. She pulled me forward and kissed me, soft and deep and certain, and I felt her smile against my lips halfway through, and she pulled back laughing and crying at the same time the way people do when something is too big for just one feeling. "It fits," she said, looking at her hand, voice slightly broken. "I measure your other rings," I said. She laughed harder. "Of course she did." "I'm thorough," I said. She shook her head and kissed me again. We got married on a Saturday in April. Not a big wedding. Neither of us wanted big. We had spent enough time navigating noise and opinions and other people's feelings about our relationship. This day was going to be ours. Quiet and intentional and completely us. 32 people. A restored event space in Noda. Exposed brick walls, warm Edison lighting, tall windows with afternoon light pouring through, white florals everywhere. Simple and clean and beautiful. Nadia's sisters were her bridesmaids. My cousin Trina, who had seen this come before either of us admitted it, was in the front row with her arms already crossed, trying not to cry before the ceremony even started. My mother was in the second row in a deep purple dress. She had bought 3 months in advance and shown me twice to make sure I approved. I approved both times. Marcus was there. That was the part one hadn't been certain about until 3 weeks before the wedding, when he called me on a Wednesday evening and said simply, "Send me the details. I'll be there." I had exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. "You sure?" I asked. "You're my brother," he said. "I'm not missing your wedding." He sat in the third row. He came alone. He was quiet throughout, but he was there, and that meant more than I knew how to say out loud. I was standing at the altar when the doors at the back of the room opened. My pastor was beside me, my best friend Andre on my left as best man. Trina already crying in the front row, exactly as predicted. My mother with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes bright and full. And then the music started, and Nadia came through the doors. Wine red dress, not white. We had talked about it, and she said she wanted to wear a color that felt like herself. She chose wine red, the same deep, rich color from the night I had first pinned her against that wall. The night everything broke open. She was holding a small bouquet of white flowers. Her hair was down, natural curls loose around her shoulders. Hazel eyes finding mine the moment she stepped through the doors, and staying there, locked in, like nothing else in the room existed. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. I watched her walk toward me, and I felt everything all at once. Every moment of the last 2.5 years moving through me in a single sustained wave. That first Saturday in the driveway. 2 years of silence. The February night at my door. The 9 weeks of waiting. The hallway at her apartment. The wall. The kiss. The secret. The noise. The long nights. The patient mornings. Every cold shower. Every contractor bid I stared at without reading. Every Sunday dinner with my eyes on the table. All of it had been leading to exactly this. Her walking toward me in wine red with those hazel eyes locked on mine, and a smile so real and so full it made the whole room feel brighter. When she reached the altar, she took my hands. Her fingers laced through mine. I leaned in close and said quietly, just for her, "You are everything." She squeezed my hands. "So are you," she whispered back. The ceremony was simple. We had written our own vows. Nadia went first. She held my hands and looked at me and spoke without notes, because Nadia never needed notes when she was saying something true. "Daniel," she said, "you saw me when I didn't know I needed to be seen. You were patient when patience cost you something. You gave me space to choose freely, and you waited without making me feel the weight of the wait. You showed me what it feels like to be loved without conditions or performance. You showed me that love is supposed to feel like peace. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. She steadied it. I promise to see you the way you have always seen me. Fully, consistently, every single day, for the rest of my life. I held it together. Barely. Then it was my turn. I looked at her. Those hazel eyes wet and steady and completely open. Nadia, I said, I kept quiet for 2 years because it was the right thing to do. And I would do it again. Every day of those 2 years was worth it because it led to you standing here, choosing me, freely. I paused. I promised to keep showing up, to keep seeing you, to keep building things that last, because that is the only way I know how to love, completely, solidly, without holding back. I paused one more time. I've been patient long enough. I'm done holding back. For the rest of my life, I'm done holding back. She laughed and cried at the same time. Trina sobbed openly in the front row. My mother pressed her hand to her chest. And somewhere in the third row, I heard Marcus make a sound that he would never in a million years admit was a cry. But I heard it, and I held it quietly in my chest like the gift it was. The pastor said the words. We exchanged rings. And then he said, You may kiss your bride. I took her face in both hands. The way I had that first night in the hallway, cupping her jaw gently, tilting her face up toward mine. She put her hands flat against my chest, fingers curling slightly into my jacket. We looked at each other for 1 second before the kiss. 1 full second of just seeing each other completely. No walls, no distance, no silence, no restraint, nothing between us, but everything we had chosen and everything we had built and everything we were walking into together. Then I kissed her, and the room disappeared. It was the kind of kiss that carries the weight of everything that came before it and the promise of everything still to come, soft and deep and unhurried, her hands pressing into my chest, my hands holding her face like she was the most precious thing I had ever touched, because she was. The room erupted. Trina's cry turned into a full celebration. Andre clapped me on the shoulder. My mother was on her feet. The 32 people in that room were loud and warm and completely alive with it. We broke the kiss and she was laughing and I was laughing and her forehead came to mine the way it always did. That gesture that was completely ours. And we just stood there for a moment in the middle of all that joy. Hi, wife, I said quietly. She pulled back just enough to look at me, those hazel eyes bright and full and certain. Hi, husband, she said. We danced our first dance to an old Al Green song that Nadia had loved since she was a little girl sitting in her grandmother's living room in Greensboro listening to records on a Sunday afternoon. She had told me that story 3 months into us. Lying on my couch on a rainy night, and I'd filed away in that place. I kept everything she told me that mattered. She didn't know I had chosen it until the first notes came through the speakers. She stopped moving for a second, looked up at me, eyes going wide. Daniel, I remember everything you tell me, I said. She pressed her face into my chest and held on. We swayed slowly in the middle of that NOTA event space while 32 people watched, and the April light came through the tall windows, and Al Green's voice moved through the room like something holy. My mother danced with Marcus later that evening. I watched him from across the room, her hand on his cheek, saying something to him quietly. He nodded. She kissed his forehead the way she had done since we were small boys. He let her. We were going to be okay. All of us. Late that night, Nadia and I sat on the steps outside the venue waiting for our car. She had taken her heels off, her feet bare on the warm April steps, her wine-red dress pulled around her, my jacket over her shoulders, her head leaning against me. The city moved quietly around us. Charlotte at night, the same city where I had grown up, built my business, renovated my house, loved this woman in silence for 2 years before I finally found the courage to knock on her door. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I said. Are you happy? She asked. I thought about the question, not the automatic answer, the real one. I looked at her, this woman on these steps in wine red with my jacket on her shoulders and a ring on her finger and her head against my arm and those hazel eyes looking up at me soft and certain and completely home. I've never been this happy in my life, I said. She smiled, that real smile, slow and full and lighting everything. She laced her fingers through mine. Me neither, she said, and we sat there together on the steps of the rest of our lives. The city quiet around us, everything exactly where it was supposed to be, for years of silence, and she was worth every single second. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. If this story moved you, hit subscribe for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means the world. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this one. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.